Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and this amazing video. I am Aditya. In this video, we will see the concept of Vuex, why we need it, what's the advantage of using it, and we will start from very basics, like very basic usage of it. So without any further ado, let's begin. Okay, so let's first understand the scenario. So suppose I have this simple view application, which is I already have. I have two pages, home and about, and on both of those pages, I have this counter component. If I just show you a quick code, so it's just like having or just counting the seconds. So it is saying like it's just having on mounted a set interval. So once it's mounted, after every 1 second, the value of seconds it's getting incremented. Okay, so it's as good as saying it's like a seconds counter. So now suppose I want this counter component every on my most of those pages. Let's say I want it on about pages as well. Now if I go to about page, okay, so it is resetted to 0 again. So what's happening here? So the thing happening here is once you go to about page, the counter component is mounted over here, and once it is mounted over here, so it's, if you are aware of the component lifecycle, it is destroyed and then again created, mounted, and all those stuff. So it's as good as saying like the counter component is freshly mounted on the about page, which brings in the fresh value of the seconds, which is 0 initial value, and it will start again from 0. Now the problem here is I don't want it like this. So suppose if I go to home page when it's at 45th second, I want on home page to be at 45th second. So how can I share this data? How can I make this consistent on each page? Well, it's pretty simple. We will use a concept known as Vuex. So what is Vuex? Let me show you with the help of a diagram. So if you go to the documentation, you will see how Vuex work, but just a glimpse of it. You have your own component structure. Maybe let's say you have 100 components or 50 components or somewhere around that, and you want most of your components to share some state. For example, suppose you are getting, let's say, data from your API, and now that API data, it's gonna get rendered on most of the components, and also the change in one component. So suppose if I, let's say, have 10 components which are fetching to-do list or which are showing to-do list, so change in one component should reflect in the other component as well. So for instance, if I change here, so as seconds are changing here in the home page, it should also reflect the same change in the about page. So to have this consistency, we use Vuex. So how Vuex work is, you first dispatch an action from your component. Generally it works like this, but of course you can straight away mutate it. We will see what is mutation. So you dispatch an action. So action is nothing but telling your Vuex store what action to be carried out on a state, and state is nothing but the data or the variable that you have defined in your store. Once the action is carried out, the action will call the mutation. Now mutation is nothing but, you could say, a mechanism to set value in your state. Why we set value in the set using mutation? Because we want that consistency throughout. If we do it straight by the state, like if we change the value of the state as it is, it will throw an error. And once the mutation is done, then the state has new value and it is rendered on the component. Simple. Now rendering a state, you can render it directly, like literally calling the state, whatever state you want to render, or you can use something known as getters. So you could say mutations are the setters for a state and getters are the getter for a state, and actions are nothing but the you could say those modifiers or some functional things that are carried out on the state. Now in the actions, as it says here, you can also call your backend API. That's fine. So for instance, if I want to get this counter, let's say, funny example, let's say I'm getting a counter from an API. So if the initial count, let's say it's coming from an API, that doesn't make it funny enough. So if it's coming from the API, then in that case I can have that API call, maybe Axios call or fetch function or fetch API inside the action. So how to write a Vuex? Well, let's begin first installing it. So as I'm using Vue 3, so I'll need to use Vuex 4. So let's install Vuex 4. So let's for now shut down our server And let's copy this command from here and let's paste it over here. So this will install Vuex, and once Vuex is installed, all we have to do is let's run back the server and then go to our code. Now the simple nomenclature is you could either have, like, you can write it anyhow, or you can use the very simple standard nomenclature for writing a Vuex store. Inside your src folder, just create another folder which is store. Okay, inside that store, create another file which is index.js. Now what will happen is you will write your store here. Okay, so in this case, now you can also have multiple store, that's not a problem, we will also see that case, but for now let's write for a one store. So in this case we will be writing a store for our counter. So let's create a state first. So here I'm going to say const state. Now this state, you could say we can call it states. Suppose in one store I want to have multiple states, so this will be a key value pair. The key will be the state value. So in this case we have our state value as seconds, which is coming from here. So you could say, you can name it anything you like, but as we are having seconds here, we will just say seconds. And then the initial value to it. So our seconds will start from 0. Okay, then we have our actions. So actions are nothing but the key value pair again. Okay, each key value pair in this action will be the name of the action. So the key will be the name of the action, and the value will be the function that you want to execute. So it's as good as saying it will be something like this. So let's say we have trigger counter. Now this thing will be a function. Okay, now what we need to do is get the value, get this thing set interval code from here and simply paste it over here. Okay, now if you notice, we are incrementing the seconds. However, we cannot use seconds.value because this seconds.value refer to the ref in Vue. So how, or it's actually from the ref of Vue. So when we write here in Vue actually, so when we declare seconds as a ref, so it becomes like, if you want to target that, you use the seconds.value, something like that. So in that case, we cannot use it here because it's no more ref. It's actually a simple state. So how to do this? Well, for that, we will need a mutation. So in this trigger function, so let me put it here like this, so it's understandable. So in this trigger counter, the first parameter could be the context, and that's the only parameter, which is the context. Now the context is nothing but an object, so we can destructure this context object and have only commit from that context. So the commit will be used to call a mutation. So let's call a mutation here. So here I'm going to say I want to commit a value, or I want to call a mutation. So this will be set seconds, which we will create in a moment, and I want to pass certain value to that mutation so that it can set it. So in this case, I will just pass 1 because we are incrementing the counter by 1. Then let's have our mutation. And here it will be same like actions, key value pair, where each key is the name of the function and value is the function itself. So let's say we have our mutation set seconds, and this will be a function. Now this will take in the state, get here states as well. So then what we need to do here is we just need to say whatever value we are getting from this commit over here, we just want to pass it over here. So here we will take another value, which is payload. Okay, another variable actually, and then we will simply say states dot second. So from states we want seconds, and we want to increment its value by whatever payload we have got. Okay, so the new value of the second, so it should be seconds, I'm not sure why I wrote set seconds. Yeah, so the new value of the seconds should be +1 of the previous value. Okay, next we have our getters. So getters, same like actions and mutations, key value pairs, but only the getter functions. So here we will say get seconds, and this will be a function which will take state as a variable or state as a parameter, states actually, and then we just want to return states dot seconds. Okay, now our initial store setup is done. Now we have to create a store. So let's create a store. So for that we will import create store from Vuex. So let's do here. So import create store. If you see, this is named import or named export. So create store from Vuex. After we import this create store, now let's create the store. So const store equal to create store. Now this will take an object where state, you will see it is state, not states. So if I write here something like root state, like be custom states, that's fine. All matter is this should be state and it has the value of our states. Then we have actions and this has the value of our actions. Mutations, this has the value of our mutations. And getters has the value of our getters. Okay, so mutations, getters, actions, and these right hand side values are nothing but whatever we have defined here, while the left hand side values are all the keys here. Okay, so that's done. Now let's save this. But before saving this, if we want to use this, because we will be importing it somewhere, so we have to export it. So let's do export const store. Now I want this store to be used in all my components. So the best way to enter this store, or you could say inject this store in our all components, is through main.js. So let's import store from store. Now I haven't written here index.js because it knows that inside that store folder, if I haven't specified any JS file, it will look for index.js automatically. Then here I just have to write use bracket store and then dot. Okay, so I'm saying here, okay, I have created a store. This is my store. Just use that store in our app. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to counter component. Now the thing is, when seconds are set, we have to make sure that the real-time value is received, or we get the real-time value. So for that we will use a computed property, or make seconds as a computed property. And here I will say computed, it will be a function which will return store.getters.get seconds. Okay, now we need to initialize this store. Okay, so how to initialize this? So it's pretty simple. We will import use store from Vuex. Okay, and then we will say const store equal to use store. Okay, then inside this mounted function we will say store dot, just make sure that your store is defined or declared before wherever you want to use it. So just make sure that. And here we will say store dot, now I want to dispatch of action to trigger this counter. So I will say store dot dispatch what action I want to trigger. So I want to trigger this trigger counter action. So I will say trigger counter. Okay, and then simply we can just see the result. Okay, so let's save this, go back over here, and then let's go to our app, quick refresh. You will see it has started incrementing. It's the 12, 13, 14, home again, 15, 16, 18. Now you'll see it has started to increment by 2. Why? Okay, so where we are here, so this trigger counter is being called twice. Okay, so it is incrementing it twice. Okay, so what we need to do is we just need to make sure that if this value is greater than 0, that means the counter has triggered. So in that case, we don't want to trigger or we don't want to set the value. Avoid that double increment. What we are going to do is our continuous increment, because we just want to increment it by 1. So we just need to make sure before we dispatch this, we just need to make sure that our store or our seconds value is equal to 0, because we want to. So if it's equal to 0, that means the counter is not triggered. Once it is equal to 0 or greater than 0, actually not equal to 0 but greater than 0, that means the counter is triggered. So let's do that here. So here we will say seconds dot value is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0 or actually equal to 0, then dispatch the event, else do nothing. Okay, so let's try it out. So let's go over here, refresh the page. Now it starts at 1, 2, 3, 4. If I go to about 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if I go to home, 14, 15, 16, 17. So it is now uniform and perfect. So this is how you can avoid those double increments or double fetch of APIs and all those stuff. All you need to make sure is that the value is already has, or it's already like in this case the counter has started. That means the value has already incremented by 1, whatever it is. If you are using API, so you just need to make sure that the initial object is not null, so you'd avoid double fetch kind of thing and all those things. So here we are with this simple store. Now let's say, suppose I have multiple stores. So how can I like organize or keep structure of my all stores? Well, for that we have something known as modules. Okay, so let's create another file inside this store, and let's call it our counter.js. So our counter.js is our counter store. Now what we need to do is, whatever we have written here, just cut it and paste it in our counter.js. Okay, simple. And then all we need to do is, here we just need to say export, and you could say default, or you could use a named export. Here I will say counter, and I will say here state. So whatever we have written here as it is just comes from here and goes inside this. Now you'll see I haven't written here create store or something like that. You'll come to know why. So once this is done, let's go back over here and just need to do import counter from counter. Okay, and then simply we have to write modules. Okay, and then it will be a key value pair. So our counter modules refer to our counter store. Okay, you can name it anything you like as long as you know what it is. You don't also need to sometimes have key values pair. You can just write it simply counter like this. Okay, so modules, first module is our counter. Now if we go back again over here, and if we just refresh the page, everything works fine without any problem. Now the actual problem starts when we have same name of states, or suppose we have same name of function, or suppose we have same mutations or same getters in multiple stores. So suppose somewhere by mistake I wrote mutations set seconds, same mutation but with different function. So suppose here it is setting the value that is being committed from here, but suppose somewhere in the other store, let's say I am having some other store, let's say timer, in there I am setting the value which is being incremented by 10 or 5. So in that case I don't want to have a conflict over here. So how to avoid that conflict? Or even if I call this seconds, I don't want to have a conflict over here. Okay, so how to avoid that conflict? So in that case we just make each of our module as namespaced, and we set it to true. This means that this module or this thing is, or this store has now become namespaced. So if I want to access this, if I go back over here, you will see I cannot access it. So if I have to access it now, simply I need to give the namespace. So first here, this will change from getters, it will become an array. And then I want to target counter module, and inside that counter module get seconds. In the same way over here, inside here I have to target counter trigger counter. Now I don't have to change anything in here. Now if I go back again over here, you will see things start to work normally again. So if I go back here, no problem. If I go back here to home page, no problem at all. Everything is fine. So that's how you can use namespaced modules or modules in your Vuex. So that's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the comment section. If you feel that this video is worth a thumbs up, please do like this video. If you feel that this video is worth a share, please do share with your network. And also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, and if you want to learn cool tips like this or some cool concepts like this, so please do subscribe to my channel as well. So till the next time, goodbye.